everyone, I'm Rebecca and I have a lot of hats. Like a lot of hats. I have a little bit of a vintage hat collection. In some cases, I guess you could say a vintage hat problem, and I also have a lot of costume hats because I'm a costumer. Most of them are for historical cosplay because your outfit is not complete without a hat. So since you guys expressed some interest in seeing my hat collection and how I store and also how I use my hat collection, I thought that that is what we should do today. So I'm going to show you how I store hats, which are kind of scattered around my house, though the majority of them do actually live in the sewing room here. You just never see them because they are this way around the camera instead of back here. And I'm also going to show you how you can utilize some actual vintage hats in your historical costuming, even if you are not doing vintage eras. Like even if you are doing, you know, Victorian or older eras, you can still potentially use those like 1940s, 50s, 60s hats in your historical costuming, which is actually pretty cool. So just a little bit of a backstory on me and on my vintage hat collection. I don't really even know how it kind of started. I remember distinctly that in like 2012, I think it was, maybe 2013, I went to a costume sale. It was put on by a theater that is now defunct, unfortunately, Seattle Musical Theater, and I was doing shows there at the time, and I remember distinctly getting a whole bunch of hats from their costume sale because they were stupid cheap. I'm talking like $1 or $2 per vintage hat, and that was kind of where it all started. And then I would go to antique stores, estate sales, garage sales, thrift stores, etc. And when I would see vintage hats that were cute, that maybe weren't a style that I already had, and that were inexpensive, like I believe all of these hats, I want to say, were under $15. I would get them and I would add them to my collection. And again, sometimes I have utilized those hats in various ways, whether that is for historical costuming or a lot of them. I used to have a business that I did called The Vintage Vocalist, where I would go and I would dress up in vintage clothing and of course a vintage hat, and I would go to sing at like assisted living residences and I would sing vintage music to them. I haven't really done that for probably about 3 years now, but I did do that for like 2 or 3 years, and so I got to at least use my vintage hats there. I also used to dress a little bit more vintage, so there was a brief period of time where I would occasionally actually just wear a vintage hat out. Personally, I have always struggled with wearing hats even when I am dressed vintage because I feel like it takes what could be a look that could be passably modern, even if it's a vintage style, and presents it in a way that is almost costumey, like people look at it as a costume, I mean. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your take on that. If you are someone who wears hats out and about on a daily basis, I would love to hear like what kind of responses that you get from the general public. I don't dress vintage anymore. I mean, this is pretty much how I dress every day in like sundresses and stuff, but it is kind of interesting to think about still going back to a more vintage style and potentially wearing those hats out and about. But you came here to see the vintage hats, so let me first show you how I store the hats in this room, and then we'll take a look at each hat really briefly. The majority of my hats are stored up on this shelf in hat boxes here in the sewing room. You can see this is the filming light set up right below that. When I moved into this house, I went ahead and added this shelf just above where like the door trim is, and that was kind of the limit of how much space that I could have, but it is tall enough for most hat boxes. You can see that some of them kind of go all the way up to the ceiling. This one, like, I think there's maybe 1/8 of an inch up in the top. Most of them fit a lot more comfortably. And what I do is I take a post-it note or a little piece of paper and I write on there which hats are in that box. So each one holds multiple hats. I think there's a couple that might only have like 2 if they're slightly larger hats, but Some of them hold a ton of hats. I also put some like designated hair pieces up there if they are like a hair piece, for example, that I have that's built on a Victorian comb. I also have some nicer caps up there, like my 1880s cap, but mostly it is all hats. I guess that's the only really special hat. That's my Daniel Deronda riding habit hat. It came in its own hat box, so that gets to live in its own special, like purpose-built hat box. And I do have other hats elsewhere because, as you can see, these hat boxes are not humongous. These are all kind of the size that you might find at Ross. Although I haven't looked at Ross lately, I do find that like Ross, Home Goods, etc. is a decent source for hat boxes. And I think ones like, for example, this one, this is one of my largest ones, and I believe that I got that secondhand, but I believe originally it came from Ross. And then some of these are vintage as well, though most of them are not. In fact, I want to say these three may be my only real true vintage ones. Oh, and this one over here in the corner, the gray one. Most of the rest of these are probably within the last like 20 to 30 years. So I'll go ahead and take down each of these hat boxes one by one and show you what's inside them and how I use them. I also have two bonnets that should be living out in a hat box that's in the garage, but they have been sitting on my desk for like 2 years instead. So let's take a look at those bonnets. So first on the tour are 3 hats, or 2 bonnets and a hat, that live in the sewing room but don't actually get to live in a box. And 2 of those are the ones that live on my sewing table, right next to my sewing machine. My bonnet that I made for my I think it was an 1850s sheer dress. This one right here could have been 1860s. It looks like this dress right here. So I made that for that. I've actually worn it a lot of other times as well, just because blue goes with everything in my wardrobe basically. But you can see it is a shirred bonnet. It's the first shirred bonnet that I've ever made. I don't remember what pattern this was, to be honest. I believe this was like a simplicity or a butterick pattern that I then added the shirring to that wasn't part of that originally. Most of these are so old that I'm not going to know the patterns that I used, so I do apologize in advance for that. And then I used the same pattern, though I think I cut down the side bits a little bit here so they weren't quite so low. They're still too low, like I still would cut these higher because they hit my shoulders. But similar style bonnet. This one I made for my plaid dress. Oh, you can see the dust on this, which is interesting because actually the blue bonnet was most recently on top of this, but I'm petting it and dust is coming off. But yeah, this is made out of silk velvet that I shirred to go with my 1850s plaid silk dress, purple plaid, that I made 2 or 3 years ago. And I really like this one. I feel like this one is just, I don't know, it's very fancy, especially with the silk velvet. So those are the 2 that should go out and live in the garage, though frankly this shouldn't. I think that's part of the problem. I don't put silk in my garage closet because there are bugs that can get out there, and silk can be eaten by bugs. So I try to keep all the silk in the house, and that's the problem. I need to find a place in the house that is not like on my sewing table to store, especially the purple bonnet. The blue one can go out in the garage. It's all polyester. And then the other one that doesn't get to live in a box is just a tiny bit too large for a box, and it's actually my most used hat because I also use it as a sun hat. It's this one right here. This was originally my Kirsten hat. For a long time it was a hat blank that I just had, and then it became my Kirsten summer outfit hat. That's what this is from right here. But then I used it for my 1990s dress. I've used it just as a sun hat in general. It's a great like standard sun hat that stays on my head pretty well. I'm sure my hair is going to get progressively more and more messy as this video goes on, so, you know, please don't judge because I'm not looking in a mirror. But we are going to start with the hat boxes. This one is like it actually doesn't live on the shelf, it lives kind of right below the shelf. You saw this hopefully before, but this contains, hopefully, if I've labeled it correctly, my natural form bonnet, my pincushion hat, and 2 antique 1890s hats. I do have some antique hats that date back pretty darn far that I've gotten, I think, mostly from antique stores, and these are 2 of them. I have not incorporated these into any of my costumes yet because I haven't had them for that long. In fact, I believe I showed these to you in a haul video sometime in the last year or so, but this is an antique 1890s hat. You know, it's black, so it's kind of hard to see the details. But this is a legitimate antique. The ribbons have seen better days. They are tearing right there. Like there's not much holding the ribbons on, but frankly the rest of the hat is in pretty fantastic condition. There's a little bit of issue with the straw over here, but really, really not that bad considering it's like 130 years old. And same for its friend over here, who is definitely missing feathers, because you can see the remnants of feathers. I do believe this also dates to the 1890s, just based on this really small shape of the hat, and also the use of like the jet beading on here, because that was super, super popular in the 1890s. This is made out of velvet, just tucked every which way, and would be perched on top of a very large hairstyle. But these are hats that, just as an example, can be used for other eras as well. Like this could actually potentially be used for some of the smaller hats that you can sometimes find throughout the bustle period, or you could bring them forward and use them as like 1940s hats as well, because those were often pretty small perched hats also. And speaking of small perched hats, we have my natural form bonnet that I kind of nicknamed my cat ear bonnet because of the bow that sticks up over the back of this. That's what the bow looks like back there. This one went with this dress over here. I really want to wear that dress again because I love that dress and I love this bonnet. It's so cute. Obviously nothing goes with my, you know, half up hairstyle that I'm doing today, but I love this bonnet. It's honestly one of my favorites that I've made because I don't dislike anything about it. Like I mentioned with those other bonnets before, there are some things that I don't like about those. Can't think of anything with this one, actually. I love every little bit of it. And lastly, another hat that I honestly love is my pincushion hat. This went with my Hussif fancy dress costume from the 19-teens that I made a few years ago. I can feel the fact that like this lives on the bottom of the hat box, and so the pins, which are actual pins, the pins have gotten pressed into the foam over time. So with my hand in here, I can actually feel the pins going through. So I have to remember before I go to wear this again to kind of pull out all the pins, but this one is just so freaking cute, and it turns me into a pincushion. Box number 2 contains some hats that you have actually seen pretty recently on this channel in other videos. And 2 of them were hats that I showed you in my recent thrift haul that both came from Thriftapalooza. And that is this one right here and this one right here. 1950s and I believe probably 1940s hat. And this is an example, like this black one in particular, you can really easily change this shape into a lot of other shapes. Frankly, without very much manipulation, you could turn this into a natural form era hat. I think you can kind of see some of the similarities in brim shape from even just like the little sort of kitty cat bonnet that I showed you. But if you were to kind of bring this back, like bend it a little bit higher and have this sit up on the head, this could very easily work for a bustle era hat. So 40s hats, I find, of like all the vintage eras, do tend to work the best for going back into, especially into bustle, because they are such like nice little small perched hats. So it would be kind of an opposite direction from how it would have been worn in the 40s, which I think, I can never remember with these, but it's you know, basically a lot more tilted, veiled, etc. But especially if you get one that's maybe not in as nice condition, this one's in pretty nice condition, but frankly the veil is not, and that's really what you need to remove, is the veil. And then, you know, throw a few extra feathers on this and you've basically got yourself a bustle era hat right there. Put some ribbons hanging down. There you go, natural form hat out of a 40s hat. The last hat in this box is actually the only hat that I keep wrapped in paper. And the reason that you've seen it recently is because I wore it with the Edwardian dress that I made recently, because this is an antique Edwardian hat. So you can see we've got nice beading down here on these chiffon little ties, and then the chiffon and the lace is all like intricately woven and stitched together into this wireframe hat. So I'm going to show you the inside so that hopefully you can better see the wire framing in here. So this is how this hat is made. It is little pieces of wire all connected together, and then it is covered over with, honestly, I think it is just a couple layers of chiffon and net. Like there is definitely a net layer underneath the chiffon, but I think that's it. So it's so lightweight because it's really just the wire framing, and then the beading is the next thing that adds the most weight to this hat. But it's beautiful. It's in pretty excellent condition. The inside is lined with cotton, so that helps for the condition to have stayed nice over the years. And this is just all gathered up in the center and kind of whip stitched around here. But there is some, like, there's some holes that have, you know, started over time within the chiffon over here, but like the lace I think is fully intact. It's really in remarkable condition, and that's why I feel safe wearing it for a costume. I wouldn't do anything, you know, strenuous in it, but just putting it on your head and putting a hat pin or two through it, it's not going to damage this hat, which is really nice that I get to keep using this like 115-year-old piece of history. So this hat right here, it's entirely possible that this may be the only hat that I've actually purchased and like not done anything to for a costume. And this one is very fancily wrapped just because that's how it came to me. Oh, I think I did add this sort of chiffon tail to it. But this is a riding hat. And I believe it came from an Eastern European country, to be honest. I can't remember where at this point. Oh, never mind. The hat will tell me. It's actually from Slovenia. It's from Ljubljana, which I may be saying incorrectly. But this is like a fur felt hat, which is why it is kept so nice. This is the kind that you would actually like need to brush, etc. It doesn't say what kind of fur felt. I would assume beaver because that is just what top hats are traditionally made out of. But the labeling on the inside just says Pajic Klobuki since 1927, and that it is the Grand Prix. I guess that's the model. So yeah, I added the net drape, but other than that, this is how I purchased it. And this is just, you know, a riding hat for my riding habit. This is one of my antique hat boxes, which really just means that I have to be careful about the bottom wanting to fall out. And this should, if I've labeled it correctly, have my dark blue Regency bonnet, my pith helmet, which would actually be the one other one that I bought specially for a costume, my burgundy velvet 50s hat, my Merida vintage hat, which is also a 50s hat, and my white straw Regency bonnet. We'll see if all of those are true. This is the Merida hat. So this is, I think, actually one that I got from that original sale. It's just simple brown, and I added the little bit of plaid going around it. And then this just sits into a nice little vintage hairstyle. This is my Regency bonnet. This is one of the few that I did not make. I actually purchased this at, I think it was like a Somewhere in Time costume sale. I did add the purple feathers to it and the purple spray of flowers with the purple ribbon. It was pure like just white decorations beforehand. I think I actually just added that last year for my purple Regency ensemble, but I have used this a lot. It has been very well worth it. It's kind of, I think, from a straw hat base, and then it's just had this poof added on top and the ribbons and some flowers, but it's a really, really great neutral, having a white hat for Regency where there is so much white. And then this one was the first Regency hat I ever made. And this happened to be a weird shaped hat to begin with. Like, I didn't change the shape of this hat. I did add the big blue poof on the back. This is just a poof of matching wool, and this actually has net underneath it to try to keep it a little bit poofier. It's all just glued on with some ribbon and flowers and feathers, etc. A little tip about a lot of my feathers, you'll notice that a lot of them are kind of in the shades of like purple, or some of them blue, but mostly a lot of like purples, pinks, etc. I got them from eBay. They were all a like leftover wedding display, but they were all in the same color, and then I've tried dyeing some of them over the years, but yeah, that's why I have a lot of feathers that are like purplish, and they're not the best quality either, but that's a good tip, is like if you can find someone selling a lot of feathers from a display like that, you can get them probably for a lot cheaper. So I mentioned there was also a pith helmet in here. This I bought for Jane from Tarzan, and I just added the purple band, but yeah, this is like a good old-fashioned real pith helmet. And finally, literally flat on the bottom of the box, this is a 1950s hat. It's a little bit crushed just up here in the crown. You can see that it's just sunk down. That was that way when I bought it, which is why I didn't mind putting it into the bottom. But it is just a little 50s hat that would, you know, have a cute tilt to it, and it lives at the bottom of this box. The next box is another vintage one. This one's a little bit sturdier, but also a lot smaller. And if this is correct, it has my 1830s hairpiece, my seaside bustle hat, my turquoise ball gown headpiece, 1830s silk cap, and 18th century silk cap. So a lot of the things in here are very crushable, which is why they can fit around a larger hat even in a small box. So yeah, this is a cap that I actually bought at the Northwest like Colonial Festival or whatever they called that. I don't even know if that still happens, to be honest. But I bought that there. It is, I'm pretty sure it's silk organza. And then this is my big silk organza cap that was made for the 1830s, but that I've more typically honestly used for the 1780s because it's basically the same exact style, which is nice. Oh good, the hairpiece is under there. The hairpiece was actually fitted completely under the crown of this hat. This I made for a seaside bustle dress, looks like this one, and it just kind of sits up on top. I'm not the biggest fan of this hat. There's something about it that is wrong. It's also not made well. This is from a long time ago. I don't remember what year that was, but I think I made this in like 2014 or something like that. So I didn't really know how to make hats, and I wasn't using good technique for like the buckram, etc. So you can see it's just a little crunchy, and literally like it sounds crunchy, but it's still cute, I guess. Everything is glued on, but then again, that's how I do most of my hats, honestly. Like someone told me at one point, don't glue things on your hats because you're gonna want to be able to change them. And frankly, you can still change things if you glued stuff on them. You just have to pull it off and then glue other stuff on it instead. And it makes up a lot faster. I do sew where possible. I don't think I did on this one. Like, I don't think anything's sewn on this hat, but nowadays I do sew where possible. This is the 1830s hairpiece, which you saw me wear last year, 2024, for the dance, the contra dance at the Victorian Festival, but I actually made this originally back in like 2015 or something like that, and it's got wires and stuff through there. These are like glue adhered together basically, and it just pops right on over a little bun of your own hair and gets pinned in place. And then there's some other loops that can get added into the hair as well. I originally made this for an orange dress. Oh, here's the orange loops. So originally it had orange loops that went on it, and at one point I also wore it as the Baroness in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and I had red loops when I wore it as the Baroness. There's also a couple of other things in this box that weren't labeled on the outside. One of them is my Felicity cap. So I made this to go with the Felicity, I think like the spring dress outfit, I'm pretty sure it was. And then I also have, oh, this was like the first 18th century cap I ever made for an outfit that I made back in like 2012, I think. It's really very, very basic. And then this is my little headpiece for my giant turquoise ball gown, this ball gown right here, and that just goes on like that. So that's why I can fit a lot of things in here, because they all crush up pretty darn small. That is part of the challenge though of these hat boxes, is like trying to fit as much as possible into the hat boxes without actually squishing or damaging anything that's inside of them. So for example, back inside this hat we go, because then the hat protects the hairpiece. This small vintage hat box actually probably has like the largest amount of hats in it, and frankly I don't even remember what all these hats are, but it says pink candy straw hat, 1940s black visor hat, 1990s ivory with veil, 1960s frame with veil, white bow with veil, 1960s pink flower petal hat, 1950s small pink hat with feather, and red fascinator. So these are all like very small hats, which is why they fit all in this relatively small hat box here. This one up top I think must have been my pink candy hat. To be honest, I don't even remember this hat. I think this is a random hat that I put on top recently that I don't think I made. I think I found this somewhere and was like, this is too big for a doll, but it would work for a small costume hat. So yeah, I have no memory of this hat. This one is for my fairy godmother early bustle, and I kind of feel like this was the pink candy hat and I redecorated it. So we'll see if there is another pink candy hat in there, but I redecorated it with the silk with little puffs of netting and the flower on the back, but it did originally, when I first made it, it had this pink lace, which is why I think that that's the same hat. This one, I believe, is the 1960s, or I believe it is from the 1960s. It's the flower hat that I mentioned. So it's basically just got a whole bunch of fake flowers put on it. I don't really know how hats like this are even supposed to be worn, but I would assume something like this little silly thing. I don't think I've worn like any of these hats other than the bustle one that I just pulled out. Again, we've got another really silly hat. This one could be 50s, not 60s, just based on this sort of like fish shape. I tend to see a lot of that in like the 50s hats. But again, it would, you know, sit right up there. Very silly, very cute. This one is another silly one. This one I know I got from that costume sale. Like, this was one of the first hats in my collection. And we've got a really, really interesting texture up on top here with its one random feather. I don't know if that feather, I assume it's meant to be in the front because that's where the veil is. But honestly, I have never really understood how people wear veils anyway. But, you know, something like that. Silly little hat. This one is just a really plain crunched up black hat. I think I found this at like a garage sale. It's velvet, but it is so crunched. I've never tried to restore it. It has been crunched the entire time I've had it, but I think I got it for like, honestly, this could have been free even, or else it was like $1. So I was like, yeah, I will just take this and we'll see what we can do with it, because this is again another type of hat that could be a good blank. So this could potentially be turned into something Victorian. We even almost have that shape of like the natural form type again, if I can get it to like stay in that shape. We'll see what some steam can do, you know, if I decide I ever actually need it. This one, I don't understand how these hats were like a thing, but I believe they just sat up here. I believe this is a 40s. And they just sat kind of on the back amongst your hairdo. This one is just like a costume fascinator. I don't think this is actually old, but I think I saw it for like $1 and just got it. I'm pretty sure that was from the thrift store. This one was the 90s one that I mentioned. Makes me think of like, I don't know, The Parent Trap or something like that. It is definitely like 90s bride, I would say. You know, we've got our little netting and the thing there, very early 90s feeling, I feel like. And then we have a frame here with a really cool netting with puffballs in it, which unfortunately is having quite a lot of issues, but I really like these little puffs with the rhinestones. I think that's super, super cute. And, you know, I don't know if this was for bridal or what, but it's very cute. And then I also just have, like, I don't know if this would have gone on a hat or if this would have just gone on as a hairstyle, but it's a nice velvet bow with net, and then also just some random other net with puffballs. I don't know if this came on something, but that also lives in this box with all these tiny hats. And obviously, since I did not otherwise see Pink Candy Bustle hat, this did originate as the Pink Candy Bustle hat, so I need to fix my box label. So something just happened while I was pulling down the hats that I'm always worried about, because it has happened literally once before, which makes me always paranoid. And yet, of course, at this moment, I wasn't thinking about it, because this is the one hat box that is hard to pull down because it's the only one that doesn't have like the strings connected to it. That's how I get down these hat boxes. Yes, I'm tall, but I do have to reach up, and for the most part I pull these strings. But I have, I believe, just literally one hat box, the one that I just pulled down, not that one, different one, that doesn't have the strings. And sure enough, as I'm pulling it down, and it's like behind some hangers too, because it's the ones that live literally directly behind where this is usually parked, as I'm pulling it down, a spider dropped down. Not on me, thank God, not on me, but now the spider is like somewhere over there, because he's still alive. This wasn't a dead spider. This was a live spider, and I don't like spiders. Now I have to wonder, where is this spider? Because I think it dropped onto the garments that are usually hanging behind your whole setup, that are like in my semi-permanent mending state. I can't say pile because they're literally hanging. But yeah, there's a spider somewhere over there. It wasn't the hugest spider, which is good, but it's still a spider and I don't want it in this room. So I'm gonna see if I can find that spider and kill it, and otherwise I'm gonna pretend that nothing's wrong and I'm gonna keep filming. Unfortunately, no luck with the spider, so we are going to just continue and pretend that everything is okay. So continuing on with this box over here, the non-spider box, this should have black shirred 1950s hat, black lace 1850s cap, 1840s hair bows, navy and white vintage hat with feather, and navy and white flowers vintage hat. I don't remember what those two look like at this moment. Ah, here is with feathers, the first one. So obviously we've got a navy and white. I'm guessing this is, I think this is 50s personally. We've got a lot of net here, some really delicate little flower blades over there, and some little ribbon over on the side. Oh, right. And then this is the with the flowers one. This is actually one that I wore for some of my gigs, I believe. I really like this one. This is 50s. Very, very cute. Honestly, that used to be one of my go-to hats, frankly, for the gigs. I really like this one as well. This one has all these ruffles along the outside, and it's just kind of a black satin. Could be a little bit smoother. It's definitely gotten a little dimpled over the years, but this is, again, 1950s. I love the larger 1950s styles. I think those are super, super cute. These are my 1840s bows. I don't know why I thought that was like a big enough deal to leave in here, but they are like this. They kind of go around the head. As you can see, they're all just like safety pinned in there, but also I can run bobby pins through the safety pins, and they go like this with giant curls. So very nice and easy. I haven't worn 1840s in a long time though. I've been thinking about doing another 1840s. We'll see. And then this is a ball cap that goes, I made it for like a morning event, but frankly, it doesn't have to be morning just because it's black. Like that's not necessarily a correlation. But I made this to go with the ball gown version of my first like 1860s dress, which was one of the first historical costumes that I ever made. I made this a couple years later. I think this was from 2012. The ironic thing is the spider box does have ties. I clearly just put it in wrong so that they weren't facing out, because this part was what was facing me, so I couldn't pull it down. But this should have in it the gray hat from my green winter bustle, a giant bustle bun hairpiece. Oh, is that in here? That will be good to find because this is not an easily accessible hat box, being all the way in the back there. It has an 1890s hat, Ravenclaw bustle hat, and the bows for my Victorian child costume, which is interesting because there was a bow in the last hat box actually for that I didn't pull out. So I need to get those sorted into at least the same hat box and not into multiple. This one, this is a great example of remaking a blank. This was like a 1990s hat originally, and it was kind of that weird shape that they used in the 1990s. I don't know why, but I made this into the hat for my big green wool bustle gown, and I used even a comb that is supposed to be like the Titanic comb that I think I had gotten from AliExpress or something, but it is not working with this hair at all. But it is just a big hat like that with all the feathers on the side. And then this hat is a straw blank that I added the bias tape around the edges and then put all of this trim on it to match what I called my Ravenclaw bustle dress, which was the first bustle dress I ever made. This is not really that bustle-y shape. It does work for some eras of bustle where you start to get like a larger, flatter, probably not for the era that I made the dress for, but I didn't know better back in like 2013, and I just piled some feathers and flowers and stuff on the back and glued those all in. Sure enough, I do have all of the rest of the bows for my Victorian child, so I need to get those situated at least in the same box. These are just a bunch of silk hair bows. I had a lot of hair bows for that outfit. That's this outfit right here. It's one of the ones I'm still proudest of. And also, sure enough, a large bustle bun hairpiece. It doesn't matter though, because this is not my hair color anymore. I used to go a little bit lighter red and they discontinued my dye, so I can't really dye my hair this color, so it's totally okay if this continues to live in this box. So what that means is twofold. For one, this box has a lot of space in it, because I don't have the 1890s hat in this box. I have it in a different box that winds up being more accessible because I use that hat a lot. So I'm gonna figure out what else I can put in this box, and it's not gonna be a spider. Sadly, the bonnets do not fit in this box. They are much too large, so I might be able to shuffle some other stuff around, or else I'll just keep it as open space for something in the future. This one, on the other hand, is one of my larger boxes. This should have my old top hat, which is like a top hat that I wore for like steampunk sort of stuff. It also has my like Ren Fair quote unquote tall hat that I bought at the Bay Area Ren Fair, and I think either they had some decoration on or I put decoration on. That's from like, I guess, 2012. And then this should have my skating bustle hat in it also, and my bustle like gala hairpiece, it says. I don't know if that's going to be another wrong color hairpiece, but this is the kind of steampunk top hat, so pretty simple there. This is the somehow very dusty, even though it's been living in a hat box for as long as I can remember, tall hat. Maybe it got dusty at fairs themselves. Yeah, I did not make this feather arrangement. I think I bought this at a fair because it's in a nice little holder that just pins on. Haven't worn that in a long time actually. And then this is one of my examples of how you can take a 1940s hat and turn it into a bustle hat, because that's exactly what this is. This is a 1940s hat that has this lovely fur trim all along this outside here, this like wavy fun fur trim. And I think I added the feather spray. I don't think that was original. And I believe the velvet bows actually are original. I can't remember what all is original versus what I added because I did this several years ago, but it's got velvet bows on there, which I think are original. I added the lace bow, and I believe I added the feather spray, and I know I added the long ribbons, but this is a 1940s hat, and it was in nice condition, and I just added the bunch of stuff, and it became a really cute bustle hat for my skating bustle. So it was a nice easy project. Oh, and this is my big hair piece that goes on the comb. So I do actually use this one pretty often. I use this for a Victorian festival. There is a comb on the inside of this, and then it's kind of woven in and out of the comb. It's like a fancy shaped comb. So yeah, it just looks nasty from the back, but then it can just pop on my hair somewhat like that and basically becomes a nice bustle hairstyle. So that's everything in this hat box. This tiny little hat box with a very creepy cat on it has still several things in it. It's got Kirsten's flower crown, a large pink 1950s hat, a larger cream shirred 1950s hat, my Titanic sash and hair comb, and my Royal Order pins and sash. So they are all smaller items, especially flatter items like my Kirsten crown, or this is another one that I was using all the time for my gigs. So this is kind of my like pinkish little 50s hat. Super, super cute. I love this one. Honestly, this is probably my favorite 1950s hat in my collection, I think. And then this is another 1950s hat. I don't think I've ever actually worn this one, but I like the shirring around it. It's possible this could be 1960s, to be honest. What's kind of cool too is that it is from Best's Apparel, Seattle. So it's a nice local hat. Don't remember where I got it though, but it looks like that. And then the other items in here are all quite flat, like my Titanic deck dress sash. And this is a bunch of little items like an antique hair comb. And then I've got my Royal Order items. So my sash, all my badges, etc. Actually, my sash is right here. And then these are all my Royal Order badges. And they're kept in a little box in there so that they stay nice and separate and I know where they are. This is another smaller box with not too much in it. It says, well, it said 2 antique straw hats. Now it seems to be crossed out and it says antique straw hat. 1910s turquoise poof hat and court gown accessories. And at one point this was apparently home also to the pincushion hat, but I took that out. So here are the court gown accessories. We've got the funny little hat from this is the English Regency court gown from last year, as well as this was the sort of like turban-y piece that went in the hair. And then this is my big 19 teens poof hat. This actually has a lot of batting underneath it to help it keep that shape, and it's just made on this straw base that I then kind of pulled over and shaped down so that it would sit like this. So it does have a really interesting shape to the brim where it comes down lower, and that is just something that you can do with steam. Oh, this I think also was to the court gown. I don't remember in what way. I think that was the little belt sash. And then this is one of the antique straw hats right here. I love the weave in the straw that they used to have in so many of the antique hats. It was also creative. And this has this little like sad bit of netting. I don't know to when this dates. Honestly, like the color and the quality of like the silk ribbon make me think it's much older, but the shape that has kind of gotten beat up over the years isn't really helping me at all to determine when this was. It's possible this could even have been a child's hat because it is pretty small in there. So maybe this was even like a 19 teens child's hat. I'm honestly not sure, but it's still a cute little hat to have, and it's a good one to be able to turn into other things when I so choose. I can revitalize this straw really with just a little bit of steam. Next up we have this small hat box, but it is a little taller than some of the others, and it ought to have my red 1850s bonnet that has since become a hat and been used for other eras as well, my Miss Pettigrew hat, a Victorian wig, quote unquote, because it's like a costumey Victorian wig that I've used I think once when my hair was not participating, a brown fur vintage hat, and my 1850s and 60s ball lace caps, one of which I actually need to pull out because I'm going to a ball on this coming Friday and I'm going to be wearing my yellow ball gown, so I'm gonna need this cap out. So I'm gonna put that aside so that I can already have that out for Friday, but I also have the one that goes with the plaid that I made just a few months ago. This is that other hat. You've probably seen me wear this a bunch of times. It was originally meant to be a bonnet, like these ties hung down. This didn't come together in the back. This is actually just pinned together right here. But it was meant to be a bonnet that like sat up like this. But frankly, I made this before I knew how to make bonnets. I think this was from 2015, something like that. And again, it's made out of like single layer buckram, and it crushed like instantly. And so it kind of became a bustle era hat instead of a bonnet, and it can just sit kind of up on the head a little bit more and works really great as a bustle era hat. And that red black has kind of become a nice neutral as well. This is that wig. I don't know why I won this. That's why I have this, but it's a pretty poor quality wig. Like it is not even a lace front. But I did wear it in a pinch one time for, I think, the 1840s when my hair was just absolutely refusing to do what I wanted, and for some reason it lives in here instead of with all the rest of my wigs, probably because I actually wear those and those are high quality and this one is not. And then this is my Miss Pettigrew, as in Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day hat. So it was a wool blank that I dyed and then added the burgundy binding, painted this little brooch, and this goes with my Delicia LaFosse cosplay from Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day. If you've never seen that movie, absolutely go and watch that as soon as you finish this video because it is the best movie. Like, it's just the best. And then this is the fur hat. I think this is 1950s based on this larger brim, but it's kind of a weird one. I think this was another one that I got like really, really cheap because otherwise I don't think I would have gotten this hat. This is one of my largest hat boxes. I also think it's just really cute, and this should have a lot of things in it. 1830s bathing cap, large brown wool 1940s hat, Anna bangs, hairpiece and hair flower, plaid bustle straw bonnet, pink striped 1910s straw hat, which is probably taking up the bulk of the room in here, Victorian bustle comb hairpiece, which we've already found, so that's not in here, 18th century market bonnet, and my Kirsten meat bonnet. So I guess we'll see what all is actually in here, starting with Kirsten right up on top. Cute. And also my market bonnet right up on top. I think I put this tulle in there because it was like collapsing a bit, but you can see it's just stuffed with tulle. Either that I did it for storage, but I think it was to keep it up like that. It's a cute bonnet. I should wear more outfits with this bonnet. I really like this. I have a tutorial on how I made this somewhere. I'll find it and I'll link it down below in the description, but I remember it being relatively easy. Not as easy as this hat was to make though, because this again just involved some steaming to get it into that 19 teens kind of dome-ish shape of the crown. And then inside this is foam, like one piece of kind of your like thicker flat foam just wrapped around, and then this is all just kind of tucked and glued around it. This is just some striped silk left over from a different dress, with a little like brooch right in the back there, which I think, oh, that's pinned on. But yeah, so it was a super easy make, and it's a really cute 19 teens hat. Okay, I completely forgot about what straw bonnet this was. This went with this dress right here. I've only worn that dress like twice, I think, so it's been a while, and that's why I forgot what this bonnet was, because I haven't worn this with anything else either. But honestly, it's a pretty versatile bonnet, and I probably should. I don't know why I bought this hat. I must have bought it on clearance, because there's no way I would have paid $5 for it, which is what this tag is, because this is a weird hat. Either that or I had something in mind of what to make out of this. This is a weird hat. I don't know why I have it. Oh my gosh, this is my 1830s bathing cap, which I did say on the thing, but I forgot how ridiculous this thing is. This is the full outfit right here. You can see just absolutely how ridiculous it is, and it's based on this fashion plate. But yeah, this is like, I don't even know how I got it to stay on my hair, but it's something along the lines of that. It is so absolutely silly. Oh, and in here I've got my Anna bangs, but not my sunflowers. So I think my sunflowers I brought out to do some like Disney bounding with. But yeah, you can see this is my bangs hairpiece that is built onto a headband along with the braid, and that way it can just go on and give me some Anna bangs. This was for Anna Frozen Fever, but it would probably work for some other Anna hairstyles as well, so it makes things very nice and easy. We've got another fairly big one next, which should have my 1890s feathered confection hat, my 1950s purple hat, 1950s navy felt hat, Samantha sailor hat, and my cream feathered 1940s hat. Again, some of these I can't think of what they look like right now. Oh yes, feathered confection hat. That is exactly what this one was, which is not the 1890s hat that was supposed to be in that other box and wasn't. So we're still on the lookout for that one. But this one went with this dress, and actually I've worn this with a couple of dresses now, I think. But this is all just cotton organdy that is like glued onto the straw hat base in various points and has that nice crinkle effect. So that worked out really well. This was the other one that I actually just got, which was why I wasn't thinking of it, because I didn't realize I put it in here. That was from that recent haul. Oh, this is another 1950s one that I really like. It's this one. I think I got this at the antique store in my town like not too long ago, like within the last few years I want to say, but it's really cute. I love this one. I need an excuse to wear this hat, that's for sure. And then the last one in there is this cute little like felt hat with all of this kind of fluff up here. I haven't worn this for anything, and it's got this net that really has seen better days and should probably just be removed. It's also got this really interesting like strap situation that I haven't seen on any of the other hats. This was from New York, Marche hats. I don't know if that's Bon Marche, but yeah, it's a very funky strap. It's like it's designed as a chin strap or something maybe, because it is kind of a slightly more towards the front. I'm really not sure, but I really like the scalloped edges on this. I don't even know if that's coming. There you go, now you can see it. It's like 3 layers of scalloped edges. It's really pretty cute. So that's everything that's in this box. This one is my tallest box, though the box itself is really quite petite, but it's good that it's tall because it has my 1880s red hat that goes with like the stripy bustle in it, as well as an antique 1870s straw hat slash bonnet. Not sure which one that was, and also a vintage straw hat. So I think this is where one of those vintage straw hats wound up. I don't like how the 1880s hat turned out. That's why I usually wear that crushed up bonnet with that outfit instead. So this was one of the vintage straw hats. This is just a blank. To be honest, it shouldn't even be in these boxes because I keep my blanks in the closet as opposed to in these boxes normally. But since it's a specialty one, we'll leave it. This is another example of a like vintage hat that would be a perfect bustle era hat, which is probably why I bought it. So I don't know exactly what year this is potentially from. It almost seems like it's in too good of condition to be like a 1940s hat, which is kind of the shape that it's given, but I think that it's a lot newer than that, to be honest. But this again is like a perfect bustle bonnet blank, so that's what I'm going to use it for eventually when I need to do that. And then that tall hat I was talking about is this one, and it's just that it's too tall. Like the proportion isn't right. It needs to have a bigger crown, or like a bigger round crown and or a shorter crown. I think that this looks like a traffic cone and I don't like wearing it, which is why I've only worn it for the initial pictures and haven't worn it since, which is too bad because frankly, this one's really well made. Like this one's not glued. This is all sewn and stuff. I did a good job on this hat, but I don't like it, so it's kind of moot. Anyway, that's it for this box. Let's move on to our final hat box in this room. The final hat box is this random like rooster hat box, but it should have my 1890s hat that was, you know, supposed to be in that other box. Blue bustle hat, Regency comb, and a 1940s bow headband. So this is the 1940s bow headband. It could be 50s, to be honest. I am not super great with dating of some of those hats in like specifics, but it kind of goes like that, maybe a little bit higher setback. But yeah, it may be more 50s actually than 40s, because 40s, the hairstyles would have gotten in the way of that style of hat. Oh, I also have some beautiful feathers in here that were given to me by a friend. So those are nice. Those will have to go into a hat at some point, but they haven't made it into a hat yet. And then this is my like 1890s hat that I had for a really long time that was my only, and somehow still matched with all of my 1890s stuff, even though it had the fabric of an 1890s costume on it. It matched with all the others as well. And this is a vintage hat. This is a hat that I got at that costume sale that I talked about, and it is just like underneath this, it is just this blue kind of shiny material, and it's fairly flat. The brim is like way down here, and then I've piled it with feathers. I think it already had some decoration when I got it. I can't remember if possibly it already had this band and this lace on it, but I think so. I think that came like it was used as a theater costume, and then I piled all of the rest of the stuff on it, and it works really great as an 1890s hat. This is another one from Best's Apparel Seattle, but yeah, it's a great 1890s hat, and it's just really, really fun. And then this is the Regency comb. I think I got this at an antique store. I love the sparkle in it. I don't know if that's coming out on camera. I believe it's just plastic, to be honest, but it still works really great for Regency. And the bustle hat that goes with this big blue bustle gown that I made back in 2020. And this is just cotton sateen with a buckram base underneath with all the fun decoration on it. And those are all of the hats that are stored in this room. Let's go ahead and take a look at my larger hats that are too big for hat boxes. Do actually keep a few hats in the closet in my sewing room as well. You can see this is where I hang a lot of my gowns, and also up at the top that is my Rapunzel braid. But there are a couple of other hats up here too. These are actually really just hat blanks. Sorry, I'm putting as much light in here as I can, but it's completely dark. That's a pirate hat up in there in the corner. Otherwise they're hat blanks in here, so I'm not going to take those ones out because they are not interesting. Further hats are stored in the two closets in my hallway, and these closets, the second one there is all shelves, this one is hanging in shelves. So I did show this closet on my costume storage tour as well, and you can see the hats are really quite a jumble up here, but these are some of my larger hats, and they're mixed in with other large costume pieces like my really, really giant muff as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at what all is stored in here and also in the closet next door, which has even more hats. So inside the coat closet, which was that first closer closet, first off, I keep all of my large plumes that are like too big to fit in. I've got a little shoebox of plumes. All of the ones that are too big to fit in there, they live up there kind of on top of the hats. That way I can just pull them out if I'm going to put them onto a hat or into a hairstyle. But these are all the really big ostrich plumes. And speaking of big ostrich plumes, I also have hats with big ostrich plumes. So this is a Regency tall bonnet, and I made this I think in like 2016 to go with a Swiss dot Regency dress, and it is probably like my first nice hat. Like, I think that this was the first hat that I made after I learned what to actually do with like the double buckram, etc. This one is sewn instead of glued, so you know, I kind of like learned from my prior mistakes and did it better. It's got a lovely shirred interior. It's made out of silk, etc. Yeah, so this one's just a little bit nicer. I did, I think, glue the trim maybe. Actually, I might have even sewn that. But yeah, so this is kind of my really nice Regency bonnet. I do have another Regency bonnet in there as well. I didn't actually make this one. I believe I bought this at the same sale that I got that white poofy one at, and then a few years later I wound up making a Regency Police that like exactly matches this one right here, so that worked out really well. However, I did make this one. This was the first buckram base hat that I ever made. This was in 2011, I think. Oh, it's definitely lost a flower of some sort. Oh no, it was a bird. There was a bird on this hat. I think the bird is actually up on the mirror behind. I don't know if you can see that there's some birds up there, but I think that the bird to this is actually up there, and it came unglued from its little clip at some point. Yeah, this is not well made. It was made out of a sturdier buckram than like the later ones, because I think this was just a single layer, and it was made out of like some home deck fabric over it. It's probably, you know what, actually, this is sewn. This was the first hat I ever made, and I sewed the binding on, and I sewed the lining in, and so, okay, it's not as bad as it could be. I guess I got lazier later, but yeah, it's an 18th century hat, so just kind of is meant to go like that, you know, on top of a nice big hairstyle. It's a little floppy, but it works. This one I made a few years ago. This is my witch's hat. I do have a tutorial on how to make this on YouTube, so I will link that down below so you can check that out. It's a felt hat, and I'm trying to remember if I did not use buckram in this one. This one is just felt. I have also made another witch's hat, which must be in the other closet. That one is a buckram base, but this one I wanted a floppy one. So it's wired in the brim, so you can just angle it any way you wanted, but I just wanted a floppy, like, Harvest witch hat. And then the last hat that lives on that shelf is the largest hat in my whole hat everything, because it's Rose's hat. It's huge. It takes up like literally the whole shelf. I can't wear it unless I'm wearing a wig because I don't have enough hair to support a hat like this. I do wish it was a little bit less floppy, but the hat that I used as the base just, again, kind of can't support itself. But I am still quite happy with this hat. As giant as it is, I think that it did a really good job of nailing the rose look. So let's look at the second closet. There are two large shelves of hats in that second closet that is meant to be a linen closet, and I have all my linens shoved into like one of the shelves. I did not even realize this hat was in there. My brother got this hat at Colonial Williamsburg when we went, when I was like, I think maybe 12 and he was like 10. I didn't realize I wound up with it, but apparently I did. So I guess I've got a cute little tricorn hat that surprisingly even fits my head. So I'll have to remember in case I ever need that. A lot of the hats in this closet are either like Edwardian or 1830s though, because those are some of the eras of the biggest hats. So this first one falls into that category, and it has a feather dangling off that obviously needs to be reattached. It fell out of the closet as I was trying to get all these hats, so that could be why. But this is the hat that goes with my 1830s archery outfit. I think it is something like this, but obviously with cute 1830s hair. I based that on this fashion plate, and this is me wearing the dress. And this was one of my really early hats that I made, and so it is very much made out of single buckram and is like not strong whatsoever. I am amazed it has lasted this long, especially being as large as it is, but it's still a cute hat. It is just really not made well. On the other hand, this is an 1830s hat that is made well, because this one I made just a few years ago, and this one's out of like double buckram, and again I sewed it, etc. I mean, the trim is glued on, but I sewed a lot of this and I think it's really cute. But yeah, this is like before and after 1830s hats of actually knowing how to make hats. However, you don't necessarily have to know how to make hats to have a really great hat, because I swear I have used this hat probably more than any other hat that I own. And I decorated this hat in 2012, and it is a giant Edwardian hat, as you can see. It was my largest hat and is now only dwarfed by Rose. The feathers might be, you know, yeah, they're doing okay. They're actually still attached, but I thought maybe they were looking a little bit limp. But I decorated this like the night before an event in August 2012. And I've used this so many times. And honestly, I love it. It's a giant straw hat that I got at the flea market. And I think I glued on pretty much everything. The tulle is actually sewn on. Like, there's giant stitches kind of encapsulating the tulle. But everything else is probably glued. And I use the heck out of this hat. This hat is my Daisy hat that you guys see at the end of every single video, because that's what I'm wearing in that picture. I made this to go with my Bustle era Daisy costume. I also, in that closet, have the prop Daisy that goes with this as well. So this is all from this costume right here. And I haven't worn it other than like the 2 times I think that I've worn that costume, but I really love that costume and I should wear these more because it's really cute. This is an older hat in my collection, but it is actually based around a straw hat, so it is still nice and sturdy. It is velvet and wool over the straw hat so that I could kind of do this look, which is based on a portrait of and by Vigée Lebrun. And yeah, it's actually nice and sturdy, and I keep it in a plastic bag so that the velvet doesn't collect dust. So it's actually done quite well. This just has net stuffed in there. And then yeah, the velvet is around here, and I don't even think I wired this brim, to be honest. I think it's just as is. This one right here is Jolly Holiday, Mary Poppins. So yeah, I made this to go with the Mary Poppins cosplay several years ago. That cosplay has kind of bitten the dust because it fell apart and tore. It just wasn't made great because it was made out of silk organza, and what can you do? But this is just based on a straw hat with a really cool like wavy brim. I don't know if this is coming across on camera. And then I put the silk organza and the flowers and stuff around it. This is my hat from the Williamsburg trip. It was just a straw blank, and at some point I decided to go, and I guess they are sewn on, I think, but I sewed on all of these ruffles along the edge, and I did a rotary cutter scallop on here thinking that would be fine, but this polyester frays like nobody's business, and frankly I need to rip this all off and start this from scratch because this is so ugly. So yeah, that one, maybe that should go into my mending pile instead of back into the closet. This one is the second 1830s hat, first 1830s bonnet that I ever made. I was doing better with my construction by the time I made this hat. However, this is too far down in the back, and so it winds up like totally hitting into my neck. But honestly, it's still really freaking cute. Like, this is a super cute bonnet, and I love the way that I trimmed it on here too. This big lace. I think it's honestly still super cute. It's just not quite the right shape. I think the next 1830s bonnet that I made was this one. Somehow the construction of this one actually wound up worse, and the brim has not held up as well as that first one. I don't know if it was that like the quality of buckram changed, or the fact that I used a poly matte satin on this, and it's just literally a heavier weight fabric, and it made the whole bonnet heavier, whereas this one is silk taffeta. But yeah, there's something obviously about this, plus probably the way that it's been sitting in the closet, that has not been kind to it. So hopefully I can kind of revive that by the time I next go to wear it, because it's a little crushed up, but it is still really cute. It's so like baby doll cupcake, and I do still really enjoy the look of this bonnet in general, but I think I'm actually liking the yellow one a little bit more. However, that's still not my only 1830s bonnet, because somehow I need a different one for like every outfit. This one has also gotten quite crushed in storage. So again, I hope that I can revive this. I mean, they take up so much space and I don't have much space, so they just wind up getting a little crushed up. This one, I think this is actually silk. Either this is a silk file that's left over from Elsa, which is kind of what I was thinking, or it's possible this is polyester. But I like the giant rosette that I did on this and the really, really big bow. But yeah, this is just another 1830s one. And this one is definitely a little more glued than sewn. And finally, the last giant hat in the closet, and almost the last hat on this hat tour, is my giant witch's hat. This is a buckram based witch hat. I did do a whole tutorial on how to make this hat, so I'll link that down below, because at least at the time there was no one else that had made and posted videos about a buckram witch's hat, and it was pretty complicated, to be honest, and it's a little bit small for my head. I wish I had made it just a tiny bit bigger, but it is beautiful and it's a fun witch's hat, and as long as I can pin it into some hair, it can perch well enough. But yeah, that is the last of my giant hats. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last couple hats that are in my garage closet, and then that's all of my hats. The last place that I keep any hats at all is my garage closet. So I have shown this closet in my costume storage tour, which was one of my oldest videos, and I will link that video down below in the description so that you can check that out, because really nothing has changed even in the last like 4.5 years. But as you can see, there are also 2 hat boxes out here. This one actually has nothing in it right now because some of my larger bonnets are inside when they probably shouldn't be. They've just been sitting on my tabletop. This one has 2 hats in it, so I'm not going to bother bringing the whole thing in, but I will show you. First off, this is probably my oldest hat box. It is actually wood. In fact, so is this one. I think this one's like a wood leather situation. It's kind of funky, but both of those are really too large to be inside. And so I've got a couple of hats in here. We're just going to have to deal with the poor lighting in here, but this bonnet is actually one of the first like costume hats that I ever made. In fact, it may be the first, because it went with the first costume that I ever made. It is literally a straw hat that I cut the back out of, applied some trim with glue, applied some black lace down here also with glue, and also black ribbon. And that became my bonnet for my like 1850s, 60s outfit that was one of the first historical costumes I ever made. And then the other hat out here is a vintage hat that just doesn't fit in any of the hat boxes inside. It is nearly flat, as you can see, and it's got this satin underlayer, and this is velvet on the exterior, a little bit crushed up with satin trimming and binding here. But yeah, I thought this one was really cute, so that's why I have it. Obviously, there is room where I could put more hat boxes out here once I've truly run out of space inside. The problem with this closet is that it is not climate controlled, and also it tends to get like spiders and stuff, which I really don't like. And so I always have to like wave a broom in front of my face when I enter this closet. It does luckily have the light, as you can see, which I kind of jerry-rigged over here. This is literally a power strip that is the light switch, and the light is like an IKEA desk lamp up here on the shelf. But again, there is actually lots of room to add a lot more hat boxes in here once I do run out of storage inside. So yeah, that's all of my hats and how I store them. Again, most of them are in this room with the exception of those really larger ones. I hope I don't make too many more 1830s bonnets or I have absolutely no place to put them. I may at some point try to make really large hat boxes that could then be like stored in the garage with those larger hats in them, but they live in those like hall closets just so that they can kind of be as dust free as possible, because if they were not in a hat box and not in a closed closet, obviously that would allow them a lot of access to just a lot of dust. But being in the closet, they managed to stay pretty much dust free, which is good. So yeah, I don't know how many hats that was total. I know it was a ton. I highly recommend though, if you are out and about, whether you are thrifting, garage sales, etc., if you see hats, whether that's like an antique hat that could be potentially turned into like a historical hat, or whether that is like a straw base. You used to be able to find a lot more of them, and they're hard to find now because so many like straw hats are actually made out of paper, which is not what you want. You want real straw. But if you're out and about and you see straw bases, wool bases antique bases, etc., I do highly recommend that you get them, because you never know when you then need to make a hat for an event the next day. And if you have them already in your stash, it makes things much, much easier. But hopefully you've enjoyed this tour through my hat collection. I'd be really curious to learn about yours. Do you collect hats? Do you have a lot of vintage hats, a lot of historical hats, maybe just a lot of like cool hats in general? Please let me know. If you liked this video though, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, or, you know, sewing videos, which is my normal, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs out on Tuesdays, and we'll be back to that next week, and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content out on Saturdays, especially shorts lately. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!